Welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about ego versus self-esteem. We're going to talk about the difference between ego versus self-esteem. And we're going to break that down and talk about why that's so important. So ego would be like, egocentric, or that person's full of ego, or they're stuck in their ego. They're an egomaniac, right? You know what ego means. And then self-esteem would be, you hear, someone has low self-esteem or high self-esteem. And we're going to talk about ego versus self-esteem. I've got my notes here. I've got your downloadable free article as part of this video. So as part of this video, get a free download of everything we're talking about on a worksheet that's created by Coach Rob called Ego versus Self-Esteem. And I'm looking at it right now. I've read the whole thing. It's amazing. Make sure you get that download, and we're going to talk about it right now.
Right, ego versus self-esteem. They're actually reciprocals. They're not the same thing. They are opposites of each other. So to have both of them create certain conflicts or controversies between the two of them. And as people, we are unique in the sense that we have the capacity for egocentrism, to be egocentric or to be egotistical or egomaniacal. So when we're born with healthy, full self-esteems. As we go through being socialized or enculturized, we bump into things. We bump into our parents' ridicule. We bump into betrayal. We bump into neglect or abuse. Mm-hmm. And these things are painful or hurtful. They're destructive to our self-esteem. They chip away at it. And so our self-esteem lowers. And as it lowers, it creates kind of a vacuum, and something has to go in there. And so what goes in there is ego. And ego is the way that our minds have come up with ways to compensate for that pain. So it's like a defense mechanism as a form.
It blocks, right?
Yes. It blocks the abuse or the neglect or the shame or the guilt or, whatever each person's unique exposure is or unique challenges. And we create these worlds. They call them psychological worlds, our psychology. They're thought puzzles or thought worlds. And so we create these. We don't realize that we do it, but it can be a little bit confusing when we're in our thought worlds or in our puzzles, because they only fit together one way and they get pretty rigid, especially if you've held on to those for a long time, especially from your childhood.
Yeah.
So they don't move. They become pretty inflexible.
Oh, yeah.
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 Those are all just little patterns that we're unaware of because they're autonomic. They become automatic.
Yeah.
So when we think of these things, we have to be careful about how we get attached to them or how we block other possibility. Your ego can inflate or it can deflate. And in either circumstance, it's blocking other parts of what truth really is. It's taking a segment of it, like a preferred piece of the pie. So it takes that piece of all that is, and it says, this is the only truth. Your truth isn't even truth at all because it conflicts with this little piece of truth. So it blocks other possibility for truthfulness.
Mainly, ego isn't good or bad or right or wrong. It's relative, but you could be completely blocked and trapped inside of the ego and not be aware of it. Like it blocks truth.
So yeah, blocking truth, that really is an important concept for people to understand. And essentially, that's what beliefs do. And if we hold too tightly to a belief, what we're doing is we're blocking other truth that's either inconvenient or uncomfortable or weakens our position, so to speak, but it doesn't mean that it's not truthful. So, when we look at the whole concept of truth, for something to be absolutely true, it has to be true for everybody. But it gets complicated because we have all these beliefs. So just because we believe something doesn't mean that it's true. It might be partially true or relatively true, or I hold it as true. But if it's not also true for you, then it's not really full of truth. It's not truthful, like the truth with a capital T. But if I say blue is the best color, right? And I really believe that, and I'm passionate about it, and I'll even fight you over it if you say it isn't. It's partially true because all colors are beautiful, right? But it's not the truth. When we think about truth, we have to realize that it can feel really true and we can believe it's true, but if it's not true for everybody, then it's partial truth, relative truth, or non-truth. Sometimes truth is overwhelming. You'll notice in families a lot of times they kind of, don't say that, or don't bring this up, or, because it gets overwhelming for some people. You block the truth from being discussed, from being real. Like we all have to accept that this is the truth. We can dance around it or hide it or pretend it's something else even. Our egos are very crafty. They're very creative. In very creative ways, they build these defense mechanisms or these belief systems that will deny other truthfulness. When we get heavy in ego, if somebody is egocentric or egomaniacal or trapped in an egoic pattern, then we are blocking truth.
Okay. So you're saying that ego blocks truth, and there's full truth, there's truth, relative truth, partial truth, non-truth.
Yep.
So if somebody has a perception or a paradigm that this is 100% true, this is the way it is, or I'm at effect to this, there's nothing I can do because this is what is.
Sure.
That's it right there, right?
Sure. Like all guys only want one thing, or all women are gold diggers, or, like where we overemphasize something.
So when you say that, and when you speak it, and you think it, and you hear yourself say it, then you get stuck in that paradigm of partial truth.
And when you say paradigm, you're talking about like a belief system.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
But to say, if that person's crazy, now everything that they do underneath that, they're crazy, and it's constantly moving and shifting and changing, and I call it like mutating. I could just relate so much to
That's why
your
an
article.
ego is a psychodynamic pattern, and that's all it is. So when you start to recognize your patterns, you bring more consciousness to patterning, then you can start to modify that behavior through consciousness, which restores your access to all possibility, to truthfulness rather than partial truth or non-truth. You actually can have the truth available to you. And it's not always comfortable, it's not always convenient, it can be overwhelming, but we're capable of being among it. But we got to clean up years of stuff in order to just be present among all that is.
You get stuck in this belief system that that's the truth and that's the way it is.
Sure.
And everybody's doing this all the time. I just said it right there. Everybody. No.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that do this every day, all the time.
Most people are full of egoic puzzles or patterns, ways that they block new possibility.
So you can feel completely trapped in trying to move forward in your relationship, in your life, in your business. Maybe you're a grown adult and your parent is still acting and treating you like a child.
Sure.
Maybe, you're right.
And you're like lashing out.
Yeah, inside maybe, or outside at them, because you have this belief that why like whatever that is.
It's easy to say, well, my parents are jerks, or you come up with a label for it, a generalization, and you stick it to them. Maybe they don't realize they're holding you back because they don't realize they're afraid of being irrelevant in your life. When you notice you're in some reaction, instead of spiraling into the reaction, say, that's curious, or that's interesting, because that gives you new possibility in that moment. Curious about what? What's interesting? You can start to ask questions that are better than assigning a label and just blocking other possibility or other relative truth that could be more helpful or be more resourceful for you.
Wow. And what about self-esteem now?
Well, self-esteem is something that's natural, something you're born with. It's automatic. Self-esteem is the lack of insecurity. The more that you lack insecurity, the higher your self-esteem. So when somebody's self-esteem is lowered, it's lowered because insecurity has crept in and has not been cleaned up or recalibrated. So when we restore high self-esteem, we're just cleaning out the trash. We're taking it out and, letting it go, because we realize at a conscious level, we don't require that protection anymore. The ego wants to protect us from, abuse and neglect and betrayal and all these different things. And when we're secure, we realize the world has those things, but they don't have to take anything from me.
So a lot of people are completely trapped. Somebody's trapped in their own ego and low self-esteem, and they lash out on their mate, their partner, their employee, their anything.
They're tired of suffering.
You always do this all the time.
Always.
Always. You never do this, right? And then the person who's on the receiving of that, then their heart rate elevates.
Because they're thinking, what do you mean never or always?
Yeah, what do you mean I
That's
never?
a
Well, I just did this yesterday.
Yeah.
Would never, would have. And then now they go and then they're beating themselves up because they're not doing good enough, or they lash out on that person. And then if they have low self-esteem, now they're going through all this inner turmoil and then forming all these beliefs, and they're getting boxed in into like this complete mutation of a non-functional relationship.
Right, and it is dysfunction. Because you're getting trapped in your head, you're thinking too many, you're putting too many puzzles together when you can just be in the moment without any insecurity.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then a person is experiencing this elated joy that's based on external reference, or they could be going through this like horrible suffering based on external stimuli,
Sure. I don't make enough money. Nobody loves me enough. A lot of these are signs that you don't have a good relationship with your core. Because if you do, then you can make those things work in your life.
Yeah.
And it feels a lot more effortless than...
So you can get a lot farther, a lot faster, get where you want to go when you understand these things.
Right, because to be among what's truthful is the fastest path to what you want.
Mm-hmm.
When you're distracted by partial truths or non-truths, you can get lost. You can suffer. And suffering's not necessary. It's just you don't know what else there is.
People turn to all types of things,
Sure.
I actually had a breakdown several years back, and Rob coached me through it. And so I was so stuck in my beliefs and partial truths. I was over-polarized is the language, and stuck. And every time I came up against, my ego would go, yeah, but this, and he would help me recognize, hey, wait, you're just stuck in this pattern. You keep just rerunning patterns, but that's not the truth. That's not the truth. And it took a long time for that to really start to stick in me, to go, oh, there goes Keith again, running this pattern, and that's not me. I'm not in it. I could take it out and make it, objectify it. They say, like, objectify your demons. Well, that's like true. And I just see that it makes so much sense. Now, when something happens in my life because of the tools that you've helped me, shown me, and provided, it's changed my life, because now when something happens, I do get caught up in it sometimes, but I'm also, like, not a lot of time passes before I'm like, oh, that's what's happening. That's what's happening, and it's not a thing anymore,
Right.
And thank you.
You've restored your self-esteem, your ability to not have this take from you, or to trap you, or to give you what feels like unlove. You can just be among all these things and still be resourceful, and still be functional, and still succeed, because we're designed for that.
Yeah.
But if we get too trapped up here in thought puzzles and, habits and patterns that we just lose consciousness over, we just think, oh, it's got to be this way, or this is the way I am, or this is the way things are. Those are only partially true at best.
And that's where people become crazily neurotic.
Crazy, neurotic, yep. Whether it's alcohol or drugs or sex or gambling or, television or video games, anything in excess that really is an escape from something that you can't manage or deal with or be among with high self-esteem.
It's interesting to me how some people can, from the outside, appear to have everything in life, but they're just suffering on the inside. And then some people, just like average Joe, you call it, but it's completely like buoyant and happy and well-being because they have a healthy inner relationship.
That's right.
With all that,
Yeah, why do some multimillionaires commit suicide when most people have this ideal that, oh my gosh, that's heaven on earth, or that's paradise, or, some kind of reference to the utmost awesomeness that there could ever be, but yet suicidal. Or like you said, someone who comes from adversity with all the challenges, economic, financial, psychological, all these challenges, but yet they thrive and bring happiness and empowerment to their communities or their families, or absolutely. So it's not the money that makes the difference. It's the relationship you have inside with yourself, with a capital S, with truth, with a capital T, something that's true for all of us.
That's so deep.
Yeah. Wish we could cover more, but
yeah,
we'll start with this.
What are we going to talk about? Because there's more stuff you want to share in the next video.
Oh, absolutely. I think we should talk about the difference between ideals versus reality.
And
in an
what's
ideal world, whether it's negative or positive ideals, things would always be a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
But what is reality compared to that?
Oh, so you can get stuck in an ideal and go through some tremendous suffering.
Tremendous suffering because you don't realize you're trapped in an ideal. In an ideal world, you wouldn't be, well, not you, but you wouldn't be an angry person. So now I'm frustrated. I'm holding on to this ideal that you shouldn't be so angry. But maybe angry is a place where you get your motivation or pushes you through great obstacles and that I don't have in my life. And so that's the reality. But my ideal says you're wrong. I'm trying to make you wrong and I'm stuck. And so I'm suffering because I'm not really among reality. I'm among my ideal.
Wow, a fiction.
A fiction.
That's huge. So that's in the next video.
Yeah.
Wow, awesome. Well, thank you.